Hi, everybody. Welcome to Walk Worthy. I'm Erin.
And I'm Lindsay, and today our topic is going to be modesty.
Modest is hottest.
Literally, just kidding. Okay, so we're going to read 1 Timothy 2:9 just to kind of give us, what does the Bible say? 1 Timothy 2:9 says, "Likewise, I want women to adorn themselves with proper clothing, modestly and discreetly, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly garments." I'm going to read the second part. "But rather by means of good works, as is proper for women making a claim to godliness." Now, obviously, the focus of this verse is we're supposed to be, like, the inward part of us is more important than the outward. Mm-hmm. But there is an outward component to it as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that the word modesty, well, when you look up what the definition of this word is here, it means well-arranged, orderly, modest, of good behavior. So it's not necessarily just about what's on the outward appearance, but the motivation behind what's on the outward appearance.
Right.
That makes sense. I do think that the word modesty, like, I mean, you immediately were like, modest is hottest. Like, I think it has become a word, particularly in the church, that people are just like,
yeah,
okay, you know, I grew up in the church. Mm-hmm. You're a teenager in your youth group, and you're like, okay, yeah, tell me how long my shorts have to be again.
Right.
You know, so it can be something that becomes just like a burden.
Yeah.
And you almost just want to be like, no.
Yeah. It sounds boring.
Yes.
And
constraining.
unattractive.
Exactly. So there's probably a better way to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, and not to say that the word matters and it is biblical, so I don't want to discount that and say, you know, but I think also sometimes people read this and say, okay, so I can't braid my hair, I can't wear gold or pearls, right. And some people will take that and run that way.
I have gold
and silver, but I almost braided my hair, but I didn't.
Not as funny just for this. We can just show up with braids on braids.
But that's not what Paul is saying to Timothy here either. So you can, I mean, if you look at the woman in Proverbs 31, it does talk about, in part, what she's wearing. But also, along with that, it says that she's clothed in strength and dignity. And so I think about dignity alongside of modesty, that maybe that's a better word, that our clothing should reflect the dignity that we have as daughters of the King, as ambassadors of Christ. And that feels maybe a better filter?
Yeah, I mean, to me, better. The word dignity feels like,
I'm very dignified.
I feel strong and empowered by that. How do I do it? Tell me how. So I like that, you know, just the idea of, like, honor and, like, glory, excellence. If you're a dignified woman, to me, that is, like, very attractive. Like, that's something to aspire to. Not something that, like, holds you down, but, like, lifts you up.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be that.
And I think, too, immodesty, when we are immodest, it can be very cheap. And dignified feels very rich and, like you said, important and very, I don't even know all the words to say, but it has a lot of connotations that feel very like, oh, she's very dignified and important and good.
Yeah.
And somewhat untouchable in a bad, like, you know, like you don't lightly place your hands on, you don't lightly speak to, you don't lightly treat someone that is dignified. You think about how you're going to treat somebody that's dignified.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So, like we said, modesty in these verses is about our heart and just showing that our heart is what's important. What are we motivated by? If we are dressing modestly, what is our motivation in that? If we are dressing immodestly, what is our motivation in that? And, you know, is our heart intent... Obviously, our heart's intent should be to bring glory to God in all that we do. That's what the Bible calls us to as believers. But we mess it up, and we're sinful. So sometimes we're just trying to get attention.
Yeah.
I think that that's a huge one. There are insecurities that we need to be, like, reaffirmed on and fed, and we need somebody's attention to do that.
And often we're using our clothes for our own glory and our own purpose. And there's a fine line there, because this is not to say that you can't pay attention to how you look and you shouldn't dress decently, but there's a moment that you can cross over and all of a sudden, you're a little past the edge, and your motivation is to be seen, to be noticed, to be looked at, to be complimented when you're crossing over into that line of immodesty. And that's maybe a good place to look at, what is my motive in getting dressed here and what I'm wearing? Is it to look decent and put together and dignified and, that's all fine? Or is it, I'm just on the edge of wanting people to lust after me. I'm trying to provoke something in somebody else and gain that attention. So that really comes down to our heart and why we're dressing how we're dressing and what we're putting on. And modesty goes beyond just clothing, though. So we can talk a lot about clothing. I'm not going to give a list of rules. You can wear this, you can't wear that.
For sure.
I've seen, if you talk about swimwear, I've seen one pieces where I'm like, you'd be better off in a two-piece. That'd be more modest than what you're wearing. So, so it kind of, it's hard to say this is yes, this is no, but I think a lot of it comes back to why we're wearing what we're wearing.
Yeah.
And modesty goes beyond just the clothing, but it can also be our behavior. There, in Proverbs 7, there's a woman that is the adulterous woman, and it really contrasts, to me it's a really good contrast with what we're supposed to be in a godly way. And it talks about her behavior being, she lurks by every corner, she's boisterous, she has a brazen face, she's seeking someone's presence earnestly. I can be in a turtleneck and be doing those things, and that would be considered very immodest.
Right.
So it's not just on how we're dressed, that certainly is a part of it, but it's also how we act. We're called to something different as godly women.
Yeah, and brazen face, I think it would be good to maybe say what that means.
Yeah.
What would a woman in our day and age, what would her behavior be like this, lurks by every corner? What are some practical things that maybe a woman these days might be doing? Maybe she's not lurking around every corner.
Right.
Literally,
So in a way, though, that woman is always on the prowl for particularly male attention. I think they want to be complimented by females, too, to say, oh, you're so beautiful, you always look so amazing, I wish I could look like you, and that feels good. But I also think it's more the male attention. And so you're looking everywhere that you go, in the supermarket or at your job or in your neighborhood or at your kid's sporting event, your goal is that people notice you and are interested and attracted to your outward appearance and your behavior. And it might have to do with how you joke, how you talk to people's arms, and just how you carry yourself, even where you're advertising that you're just kind of on the prowl. And a brazen face, it's hard because you have pictures in your mind, but it's hard always to put those to words. But it would be someone that's very bold in but there's a sexual tone to it. Where you're maybe a little off sides, just a little suggestive,
little comments here and there. Where you didn't really do anything, or you tell yourself at least. But you're looking for that from somebody else.
And women will even act like this in front of and when they're with their husbands, which is so incredibly disrespectful and how humiliating to your husband. My word.
Whew. Not good. And this kind of behavior is directly opposite of what we are called to as women. The Bible talks about being women of discretion. It talks about our chaste and respectful behavior. Chaste.
Yeah.
I don't know which way to say it. But those are the things we're supposed to be. And that's very pure. That's very clean. That's very, no one would be able to even think any of those things about you because you are guarded in that way. Instead of just, here I am.
Right. And it's really ultimately very unattractive to be brazen. It's very cheap. You're advertising, I'm here for whoever, and there is no dignity in that at all. And if you want to be, I want to be respected as a serious person. And so that comes down to, in part, how I conduct myself in my behavior. Am I dignified, or am I just brazen and bold and lurking by every corner?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's important to realize what you're going to attract when you're that way too. You're not going to attract anything that's worthwhile. It might be fulfilling for the moment, but it's not going to be anything to really hold on to.
Right.
So.
Right. And so all of these things work together. How we dress, Proverbs certainly talks about us again, while I can't draw a specific line, it does talk about us being dressed as a harlot. Like that woman in Proverbs 7 is dressed as a harlot. So there is a certain way where you cross over into a line where it's like, okay, now you're, I tell my girls, don't be hussies. Don't dress like a hussy.
I heard them say like, don't look like a hussy.
Don't look like a hussy. I feel like it's a slightly nicer word than harlot. I don't really want to tell my girls that, but and I'll tell my boys too, like you don't want someone that's dressed like a hussy because she's a hussy for you, but she's a hussy for everybody else too. So it's also, there is such a thing as being dressed as a harlot. The Bible does say that. So there's a gray area, but there's a moment where you cross over and you're just dressed like a harlot. So there is modesty in our clothing, there's modesty in our behavior, but then there's also how we talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we were saying, some of those like comments, some of those little flirty comments with, whether you're married or not, you're still given a certain impression or idea saying what you're up for, basically, by how you're presenting yourself or the things that you're saying or trying to just draw people in or wanting to be the center of attention, like in a group of people, if you have to have like all eyes on you and like those are the things that are you seducing someone? The Bible says in Proverbs 7, with her persuasion, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she seduces him. It's not even necessarily about you. What are you saying to other people about themselves? That is just like not appropriate behavior for a dignified woman.
Right. And flattery is a big one. Flattery is different than encouragement. There are many people in this church, men and women, who do a great job. That just happens to be the world in which I'm in. Other people are in a job or in a school somewhere. And there are moments where it's appropriate to tell someone, oh my word, thank you so much. That was such a big help. I really appreciated how you did that. That is different from, oh my gosh, you're so strong and amazing. Just like some person with these flattering, and people can be drawn in, male and female, by our flattering words. And that to me is not dignified. It's not modest, because there's a motive to that where I'm falsely or overly praising someone, but I have a motive to gain. And for me, the motive might be, if I'm being immodest, just to gain attention because I'm so insecure that I need that. But that might be doing something in somebody else that is provoking a lust or provoking an interest that is offsides or unwarranted. So we have to be careful with our words and asking ourselves, are they dignified? So we can be overly flattering and not even, and honestly, I want to say not even realize that we're seducing people, but probably you realize that you're doing it and you like it. You like to play the game of using that immodesty in your language to draw people in because you like the chase and that feeds something in you. Well, you can also do it through crass humor and offsides jokes that are not dignified. And so if you think of the opposite of modesty being, we're immodest, but if you think, okay, is my speech dignified? That's a good filter for our words.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking too, kind of knowing the difference between what is flattery, and I feel like when you are complimenting someone, you're building someone up about something that matters. I feel like flattery is so surface level. It's so fleeting. It's not about, it's not encouraging this as a person, like, oh, I'm going to build this person up and let them know that they did a great job. It's going to almost always be things that are so like just fleeting, like, oh, you're so, like you said, you're so strong, like you're so, like things like that, where it's not like, you don't care about this person as a person. Right. You're not seeing them as a person. You're seeing them as someone that can, make you feel less insecure, make you feel good about yourself, give you the attention that you need. It's not about them.
Yes. And that's very good. It's very self-centered. Flattery is very self-centered. And as much as, and people should pay attention, if you're being flattered, as much as you might feel like that's about you, it's really not. It's about the person that is doing the flattering because they ultimately want something. They're getting something out of that. Absolutely. So we are called to be modest in our speech, to be women of dignity, which carries over into how we talk, also how we dress, how we act.
Well, and we were talking about dressing like a harlot, and I think that, people might be like, well, what does a harlot dress like? Like, you know what they dress like. Right? I feel like it would be really easy to be like, well, like, this isn't exactly like, if you're even questioning it, like, do I look like a hussy? Like, you probably do.
You probably do.
Stop questioning it. You do. Yeah. And just being honest with yourself. Like, we want to be so, like, we want to walk that line so closely when it would just be better to be like, I'm not even going to get close to it, as with all sin,
Yep. when I looked up the English definition of modesty, it said not lewd. And that's not a word we use a lot. Like, oh, she's very lewd.
Yeah, lewd lady.
But that word means given to the indulgence of lust. And that is such a great picture of what immodesty does, is that it caters to a lust in somebody else. And we're using our clothing, our words, or our behavior to cater to some lust in somebody else. Whether that, again, is flattery, whether that's interest, whether that's physical lust, that we are using ourselves to cater to that, which is a very low base thing that we're cultivating instead of being the dignified women that we're called to be.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking, maybe this is something we have further down to talk about, but do you think there's an aspect of, even in dress, where there's just an ignorance in not knowing?
Absolutely.
And I think maybe we should talk on that. Like, maybe somebody's watching for the first time and they're like, oh, like, well, how am I supposed to dress? Like, I don't even know. I don't think that every person that is potentially dressing in an immodest way is trying to do these things, not necessarily. And so I think, maybe you're a newer believer, maybe you just don't realize, like, how you might look in some things. And I think maybe having sisters in Christ that are around you to tell you, like, hey, not great.
Yeah.
You look great, but maybe not for where you're going. I just don't want to be, like, condemning that. Oh, if you're dressing in this way, then girl.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Yeah,
and I think, too, that we grow in this as well. I mean,
definitely.
I probably wore things when I was 20 that I wouldn't wear now. And then there also are things that are just age appropriate, that there were things that were modest, but like, I'm a mother of 5. I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to wear the same things that I would when I was 20. So there are some variables. There are some things that we grow in, and that's important to pay attention to. And yeah, I think sometimes we just don't, like you said, we're just ignorant. And we might follow culture because we're not thinking about it. And so it's important to maybe say to some people, maybe pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about it a little bit.
Or, you were just telling a story earlier about, like, your husband saying, like, you're not going to wear that, right? And you were like, no, but, like, if your husband says something is not appropriate for other people to see, like, well, he knows.
Yeah, right.
So, like, respect that and listen to that as well.
Yeah. It's fun. I had some like leggings on and a shirt, and had a sweater I was putting over it.
Yeah.
I was like mostly ready for church, and he was like, "Wait."
And you knew.
Yeah, of course. I was like, "I'm not going out like this." It's
right.
fine. But there are some people who would hear their husband say that and be like, stop being so crazy. I'm going, whatever.
Like,
I can wear this.
don't
It's
control
fine.
me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, that really indicates a rebellion in our own hearts.
Yeah.
And I think, so I know there's ignorance and past for that, there are things we do in ignorance, and that's all fine and good. But even at the beginning, I was thinking, as you and I were kind of bristling at the word modesty, I was thinking, that's probably a little bit of rebellion in my heart. like, let's be honest. Part of me is like, ew, that doesn't sound fun.
Right.
But so we are probably more rebellious than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. I think, like, that's why modesty is, like, so hard, and why we don't want to do it is because we are the reason they're warning against this woman in Proverbs 7 is because, like, as sinful women, like, that is what we would tend to be if not for Christ.
Yes.
So if we are retreating to that or walking in ignorance of just, this is, like, what seems like right to me, of course we're going to be those women. We're going to be immodest. So we have to really check our hearts. Like, okay, am I just, like, trying to walk this line because I do feel like I have freedom to do this? Am I trying to walk this line because I just don't want to do what I'm supposed to do?
Right. And it's honestly not even for me so much that I want to dress like a hussy as much as I don't really want to be told what to do. Don't tell me what to wear.
Right, exactly.
Which is so, it is. It's just rebellion in our hearts. It's nothing more than that. And it talks about that woman being boisterous and rebellious. That's part of the definition of who she is in contrast to, like you said before, the godly woman that is chaste and respectful. That's a sliding scale. I don't know where everybody, our viewers or even ourselves, are on that scale. Right. Am I further toward boisterous and rebellious, or am I headed toward chaste and respectful? Hopefully I'm working my way toward chaste and respectful, but little by little.
Absolutely.
But we can be, when we are rebellious, that is not only harmful to us, but we can cause other people to sin. And when we were talking about marriages a little bit ago, that can cause incredible destruction in your marriage. And I don't know if we realize all the ways that we little by little tear down our marriages through even things like this, immodesty in our words and our dress, our behavior. Again, I can be dressed great and modest and everything and go to a party somewhere and be completely immodest in my behavior and my words towards some other man and totally bring disrespect to my husband, which harms my marriage. And
Right. I mean, how embarrassing.
so embarrassing. I wouldn't want him doing that to me.
Right, exactly.
I'd be so mad.
It's so embarrassing. And like then, what is everybody thinking about our marriage now? And what do I even think about our marriage right now?
Right. And who are you?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Exactly. It's a symptom of a way bigger problem. And I think other problems that it's symptoms of too are just looking at like where's my identity found? Where's my security found? Do I have a problem with like wanting people to lust after me and their attention? Am I thinking of other people more than myself? Like it's all so self-centered. Immodesty in our speech, our dress, our behavior, any of those things. They're all so self-centered. Yeah. So if we could like pay attention to other people, whether, it is your husband in that situation or other people that you're going to be around, whether believers or unbelievers, like are you causing them to be pulled into something that is all around bad?
Yeah.
And to just be mindful of the other people around you. Obviously, it could be difficult for singles to walk this out. Just because of the world that we live in. And you're looking for a spouse, maybe.
Right.
So you think like, well, I gotta put myself out
Advertise,
there.
Here I am. Here's all that I am.
Right.
And this is a judgment call, okay? So I'll just admit it is. But I really think that how we dress in part speaks to who we are. So if I'm really tired and I know that I'm not leaving, I'm probably in sweats, teaching my kids in sweats. Like this is how I feel today, But if I have to go somewhere and I have to look professional, I look different because that speaks to, in part, who we are, our attitudes, how we're feeling in that particular day. And so I do think that our clothing and our behavior in part speaks to our identity. And when I see somebody that is constantly dressed immodestly, that is acting like they're constantly drawing someone in, that tells me something about who they are, whether they intend that or not. That tells me that you are an insecure, needy person.
She said it, folks.
I said it. That you are seeking that attention because there's something amiss in your own heart. And that would be the type of girl that I would caution my sons against because I don't think you can ever fill that hole.
For sure.
They're going to get that attention from you for a moment, and that eventually is not going to be enough, and then they're going to seek that attention from somewhere else. So I would say to my sons, don't date someone like that. And to my daughters, I would say, sweetie, what is wrong that you feel like you need this to be advertising like this and dress like this? What is wrong with your identity, and why do you feel like you have to act like this and look like this? So I'm not sure what y'all want to be advertising, but if you want to be putting forth and acting like you're a strong woman, you might want to consider how you're dressed and what you're wearing.
Yeah, definitely. I think with any discussion with modesty, which you kind of said earlier, we're not going to give you obviously like this is how wide your straps need to be, and only one piece when we're adults here. So people might be asking though, maybe they're looking at their closet like, how do I know? Like, am I modest? Am I honoring the Lord? And I think it's important to say like God didn't give us rules. He cares about our heart. And if your heart is correct, then it should be overflowing on the outside as well. It should show like who you are. So I think it's important to say there isn't like a rule that you have to follow and now I'm modest enough. I'm modest enough to be a follower of Jesus. Right. Like let the Holy Spirit have its work in you and lead you in that way. But I think one good way to kind of measure it is to just ask yourself a question of like, who am I around? And honestly, like I said before, like thinking of other people more than yourself. Like, could this be a stumbling block for a brother in Christ? We were talking about cultures, different cultures, like different things are modest in different places. You wear something to a beach, you wouldn't wear to a funeral, like within one culture. Right. In some cultures, on a trip to India, like their shoulders that's an immodest part. Your shoulders need to be covered. That doesn't make any sense to us here, right? But if I'm going to go there and I want to have a good testimony among their people and not cause people to stumble there, like I'm going to cover my shoulders. Right. So just knowing what's appropriate where you're going and just having a heart to see how can I help other people in this way, because it's not about us and fulfilling how we want to feel and what we want to do, but how can I serve the people that I'm going to be around?
And I want to say it doesn't mean that you have to be frumpy. I mean, you talked about singles for a minute, particularly that want to look cute and look attractive, and I mean, so do I.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm married, but I don't want to go out and be like, oh, geez, she quit. You know? So, but I think it's important. I guess I want to say this to the singles who are, you know, like you said, we consider the need of the moment and who we're around, and that's important. But also, you can still be attractive and dignified, and a lot of that, for the single women out there, you need to really consider, as you said before, what you're attracting. Because if you're only catering to the lust of the flesh in somebody else, you're going to attract somebody that's only interested in your flesh, and that's it. And that's as far as their interest goes. They're not going to be interested in your character. They're not going to likely be that godly. And they're not going to press for godliness in your relationship. So if you want a marriage that is going to be godly, you need to have a dating relationship that is godly, and you need to be godly. And part of that is based on how you're dressed and how you look. But that being said, you can be dignified and be very attractive. I think about Jackie Onassis or Jackie Kennedy, who was a fashion icon, and she was always dignified. You think about Princess Di, who has had very strict rules because she was literally royalty on what she can and can't wear. Princess Kate, again, these are fashion icons that are incredibly beautiful, and they go out, they always look amazing, but they're dignified at the same time. So it's kind of a cop-out to say, you know, I don't want to be frumpy all the time. You don't have to be frumpy all the time.
Right. Well, and God didn't intend for us to be frumpy all the time. Like, God created women beautiful.
Right.
Like, women are more beautiful than men.
Right.
So, like, he had a purpose. They just are. Like, any woman is going to be more beautiful than a man. And so, like, that's part of a reflection of who he is. We are made in his image. And so that shouldn't be, like, necessarily, like, downplayed or bring shame upon you.
Right.
Like, okay, well, God made me like this, so how do I, you know, honor that in a way that honors him?
But it's insane to say the measure of my beauty is how much I reveal.
Yeah,
So absolutely. I'm only beautiful if I show certain parts that should be covered.
Right.
What? That's beauty?
Right.
Yeah, and there is something very powerful about the beauty of a woman that God created that way. There was a study years ago where advertising agencies found that if they put a beautiful woman in an ad, it kept the viewer looking, male or female, for longer than otherwise. Like, it wasn't an animal, it wasn't a kid, it wasn't a car or something rich. It was like, if you could put a beautiful woman in, no matter what you're selling, and if you pay attention, it doesn't matter if you're selling a car or a swimming pool or suntan lotion or food, there's a beautiful woman in that ad. Because they know that you're going to look at it longer, because God did make something very powerful with women and how he's created us. That is part of the gift that we have. And it's okay to be attractive. We just want to be attractive in the right way and be attracting the right things.
Well, and I think, like, it is, like you said, in the right way. I think that there is something, I don't remember, maybe it was you that said it when I was in high school or something, I really don't remember. But just talking about, like, the mysteriousness of a woman. And if you are just out there, like, this is me, and like you said, the more I can uncover, like, the more beautiful I am, like, there's no mystery in that. There's no discretion in that. There's nothing that, like, draws a real person, a real man of God to that, because there isn't the hidden. I like that it says the hidden person of the heart, because it's something you have to, like, search for and find out in somebody. I think that's, like, so pretty. But to me, like, just the thought of, like, having that mystery or that discretion is, like, so attractive. Like, that's what I want to be, you know? So, like, I want my husband to want to, like, find out more about me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, obviously we're married, we know quite a lot about each other, but, like, when we're dating and
But it
things
draws.
like that,
It does.
like, thinking about that, to me, even as, like, a high schooler, that was, like, so attractive to me. Like, oh yeah, I want to be that, because that's what's really going to, like, draw somebody to want to know, like, the real me.
Yeah. And the truth is, for most of us, being entirely uncovered is not the most attractive. Like, you know, like, there are, you know, like, no, but I'm saying, like, there are clothing where it's like,
I know.
You know, if you cover a little more, it's actually a little more attractive because you're leaving some mystery, you know, to all that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Unless you're like a supermodel.
Which we're not, okay?
Right, we're not. And that's okay. So things that might be a little longer might actually be more flattering.
Exactly, for sure.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
You're killing me right now. But it's true. It's true. Take the advice, folks. You get your fashion advice here. That verse, I just wanted to kind of close with this, because the verse says, above all, wait, is that in this verse? Yeah, verse number 10. Nope, that's not it. Where's this verse from?
1 Peter 3.
Okay. Above all, let the hidden person of the heart be most important. That hidden person of the heart. Above all else, that's what's important in a person. And like I said before, if that person is seeking to honor the Lord, if that person is seeking to give glory to the Lord where glory is due, and not draw attention to themselves, but serve others and point people to the Lord, then it's going to all come out in the right way. You're going to be modest in your behavior. You're going to be modest in your speech and modest in your dress because you're pointing people to something bigger.
Yep. And that end of that verse, it says that that's precious in the sight of God. And I think that is the part that we forget when we are immodest or even thinking about being modest, is that I'm ultimately supposed to be doing, let everything that we do be done to the glory of God. And this I should be doing because this is precious to the Lord. This is pleasing to the Lord. And that should be my goal in every single thing that I do, is to be more pleasing in his sight.
Because ultimately, you could be dressed like a supermodel or like look amazing and be ugly.
Yes.
You can be an ugly person, or you can, wear skirts down to your ankles and cover every inch of you and be just the most beautiful person ever because of that hidden person of the heart.
Or you can also be dressed modestly and still be really ugly inside.
Exactly.
So it really, that hidden person, it has very little to do with your outward appearance. And that's what we should be most concerned about. But our outward appearance should reflect who we are inside.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we said a lot. Hopefully you can just dig through all that, find the hidden person of the heart. But ultimately, this isn't to, put heavy burdens on you to bring shame or rules. This is just one more way that we can walk worthy of the calling with which we have been called. That is what we're supposed to be as women, as humans, honestly. Are we modest? Are we serving others with what we're doing? Are we seeking to glorify God? We hope this was helpful to you, and we will see you next time. Until then, walk worthy.